Your pet would like to have a word with you. In fact, your dog, cat, bird, horse, fish, even bearded dragon would like to have an entire conversation with you. But having that trans-species discussion is difficult without an interpreter or go-between, a specifically skilled individual who's been communicating with our animal friends for more than 3 decades, bridging gaps in understanding, elevating relationships, building peace and harmony among all Earth's creatures. That person is Suzan Vaughn, the Animal Whisperer.
In this episode, a lovebird without a lover. Enrique was a beautiful lovebird, but when I first tuned into him, a wave of grief swept over me. It felt as if he'd lost someone that he really loved. He and his people had survived a California wildfire that burned down the entire town of Paradise, and he was feeling all of the losses deeply.
Yeah.
And it felt to me like he had lost someone that he really loved.
Yeah.
And I felt he was a little bit down about it.
Yeah. I feel it too. It gets harder for me as time goes on. I just feel a real heaviness kind of in my heart, and my shoulders feel down, and I just feel the weight of his sadness. And yes, he did lose a friend. Yeah. And I haven't filled the void. I just feel awful. I just feel the heaviness of it. I'm tearing up because it's always at the back of my mind, and then it moves to the front of my mind, and then I have to put it at the back of my mind. So yeah.
So it's a bird friend?
Yeah, it was.
Was it a smaller bird than him?
He was the same breed, but he was, I think, a little smaller in stature, and he was older.
Yes. Okay.
And so they got paired together when Enrique was little, because I've been told it's very hard to pair lovebirds because they're territorial, but yet they bond really deeply. And so we evacuated from the campfire in Paradise with Limo, and he was one of 3 birds we evacuated with, and his hen had died right before the fire, and so I could feel his sadness. And so when we were in the midst of relocating, I said, we've got to get a friend, because I know that we provide as much as we can, so that's what the situation was. And then he passed, maybe, with birds, maybe it was smoke inhalation, even though we did everything we could. Everybody had smoke inhalation after that fire. So
yes.
Anyway.
All right. So is there a plan to get a new friend then, or?
I've entertained it, but I'm really ambivalent, because I hear so much about how dangerous it can be if they don't meet. I mean, his cage is his, and I don't know if we could. It's a big cage. I don't know if we can afford to get another one, but even that aside, we might be able to figure that part out. But I don't want to endanger him or even the new little one coming in. My heart is breaking for him. So I'm caught in that space of grief and ambivalency and worry. So and I don't want him to take that on. I'm just trying to do the best by him, and I'm very lost at this point.
His person, Kathleen, had been told that pairing him with a new bird friend was going to be difficult. She was also worried that she wouldn't understand his cues, and it would end up hurting either Enrique or the new bird. So the bird sent me a clear picture of a smaller yellow bird that would make a perfect mate for him. And Kathleen said she thought it might be one of the 2 canaries that lived in another cage right in his room. So I asked her to test it out while I was on the phone. Do you know what bird would be a small yellow bird with all yellow?
Well, he lives with 2 canaries, and they're partially yellow. Their mama was completely yellow one.
Do you get the impression that Enrique is very fond of Any smaller yellow bird, like the female of the brother-sister combo?
I don't get the impression either way, um, but he's looking over at her now.
He showed me a smaller yellow bird as a potential mate. I feel like I'm getting the yes on the potential sister of that group, and I understand some of your concerns. The male and female canaries in his room were in separate cages. Our plan was to let Enrique out of his cage so he could show us if one of the canaries in the room would be a potential mate for him. He began to chirp when we were talking about it.
Do you want me to let him out?
Yeah, let's ask him if you like the female or if one of these yellow birds is the mate you would like, could you please fly onto top of their cage?
Okay. All right. Let me go let him out.
Okay. So I'm telling him, if you want to have one of these two birds in your cage with you as a mate, then please fly onto one of those cages. Okay, let's take our attention off of him for a minute and
Okay.
talk about another loss that I felt from him. The
Okay.
other loss I felt from him was a loss of nature. I used to be able to see nature, or I used to go outside in my cage, and there's a certain loss of that too. Can you speak to that?
Well, I mean, when the weather is nice and the air quality is good, we like to put them outside. And my husband is adamant about doing that. We live in Chico and it gets to be, 100 plus in the summers. And when the wildfires were going, it was, even if it wasn't 100 plus, it was still very dangerous to be outside. So I can see that there are two things. We used to kind of have him in a different part of the house where it was more central, but it was also closer to cooking. And I was afraid of any fumes that might not be good for his lungs. I
All
don't know.
right, so the two of us are requesting that if he would like to have either one of the two birds that are in that room in his cage as a mate, he should go fly onto their cage. Okay, just be real still. Is he on the girl?
Nope, boy.
Okay. All right. Well, that's his answer.
Oh,
The bird inside the cage hopped back and forth beneath Enrique, who sat on top of the cage. It was a friendly feeling of playfulness. The male canary chirped and hopped as Enrique observed his antics in the cage below his feet. Now, how scared would you be to put them in the same cage together?
at this point, I'd be very, very nervous about it.
And what would be the worst thing that could happen?
That the lovebird could tear apart the canary.
Okay.
Canaries are like, when you hold them, they're like little tiny cotton balls. They're so light and they have such little tiny seed beaks. And lovebirds are so, they use their feet as hands and their beaks, and they eat seeds. Well, he also eats uh, a pellet diet with seeds, so he gets the best of both. But yeah, that's would be my fear, is that his
Okay.
strength. Because I don't know if he, I don't know about if he wants to bond or he wants to dominate. Like that sounds, I know that sounds really mean, but that's my fear because I don't know him that well.
He shows bonding. I mean, obviously I don't want to be wrong about it, but he shows a smaller yellow bird that he could kind of protect and watch over. And the other bird was pretty animated, seemed kind of interested, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he was animated or threatened. That's where my ambivalence comes in
Yeah.
because he's hopping back and forth
I
and
didn't feel a fear.
okay.
I felt more of kind of an excitement.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Enrique's message was pretty clear.
Now he's on the girl's cage.
Okay.
Oh, there he's back on his own cage now.
Okay, got it.
Would he ever be interested in getting to know me, or does he just not trust me as a human, a big old human?
He doesn't understand what you mean. He feels like you are acquainted.
Oh,
What does that
well,
mean to you?
that means could we deepen our connection? Could
And what
we?
would that look like to you? He would get on your finger, or you would feed him, or what would that be like?
Yeah, that would be more like he would accept my finger and maybe eventually accept scritches behind his, where his feathers are pipping in.
He says he's more used to a dowel.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wonder.
Or something like that. But you can put your finger out there and just wait. You kind of moved it all around. Just don't put it more, let him make the move now. He says it's very scary because of the hands. So I ask him, what's the deal with the hands? The hands are big restraints. They're
Yeah,
very scary. They
yeah,
can hold you down, they can do all kinds of stuff. So he's a little bit he's a little afraid of hands.
okay.
And yeah, but he is ready for his next mate. If you feel that it should be a bird like him, that's fine. He's mentioned that he has very deep friendship with small yellow bird. That could be the ones right there in the room. Enrique is pretty flexible, but he's not doing well as a solo bird.
No, no, he's not. He's not.
So
Yeah,
here's another thing you can do. You could put a little piece of mango or something on the end of a little stick like that and hold it so
okay.
that the hands begin to have a better connotation.
Yeah,
Right now, the hands only capture and hold.
I understand.
The hands need to have a different connotation and they need to be a little bit more positive.
Interesting if I'm in the room to open the canary's cage and see what happens.
Yeah, let's see.
Be able to, well, that's how I introduced him with the friend that he had before. I let them both out, and then so they were on neutral ground when they introduced. They were in the cages next to each other for a long time, and then they would fly up to the ceiling fan. Of course, it wasn't on, and they would both perch there, and then they would kind of one would scoot and the other would scoot. It was really, really sweet. I'm trying to look at him and I don't know how to describe it. I'm trying to look at him and offer him kind of soft and loving energy. That makes sense. I'm
Mhm.
trying to kind of soften my features and generate safe, calm, quiet, loving energy.
Good.
And when I do that, he's coming toward me now. Hi, buddy. Hi.
Enriquez.
Yeah, he's coming along the top of the cage. Now he's at the close ends of the cage. But it's interesting because he does. Hi, buddy. He does respond. They're very intelligent little birds.
Yes,
They
they are.
they're very emotionally tuned in.
You can continue to test this little relationship,
Okay.
or you can consider, Enrique a different kind of bird.
Okay.
And you're welcome to send me a few photos, of birds you're considering. Here's the basic thing. If you go to see a bird and you have him in a little carrier, he'll go towards the bird or he'll go away from the bird.
Okay.
You know, he was very clear. He flew right where we asked him to go. Go to the cage where you think could be a mate. So he's a good little communicator, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you'll see if he repels from the bird and goes away from it, or if he is drawn to the bird.
He wants to go back in his cage. I've never seen that before.
Enrique let us know he was ready to get back into his cage. He waited at the door and hopped around it. Kathleen said she didn't let him out as much as she would like to because it was so distressing to get him back in. She said he never wanted to go back in the cage, and she had to resort to a net, which she really disliked using.
It's horrible. I feel terrible doing it. And so sometimes one time I just said, I don't want to do it. And so I just closed the door. He's very safe in here. It's a very safe, soft room.
Right.
And so I closed the door, and it might have taken hours, but he put himself back in the cage. Probably without my presence here, he wasn't as intimidated. And that felt like so much better, you know.
Anytime you can just let him be out until he's done, it would be great.
Okay, good.
Kathleen did get Enrique a girlfriend who was also a peach-faced lovebird, and while they got along, they failed to bond. Even though Enrique loved the yellow canary deeply, she felt the two kinds of birds might not be a harmonious pairing. Kathleen felt the session was successful, though, lifting the grieving bird's spirit. She also got clarity on what he needed. The communication set off a series of events that were all pieces of the puzzle toward understanding him better. She said he no longer backed away from her like he used to when she approached. Something shifted for the good, she said, and since Enrique had never been hand-tamed, allowing her to approach him was a huge win.
For more episodes in the series, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. To learn all about Suzan Vaughn and her services, visit her website at animalwhisperer.net. Be part of the community by subscribing to her Facebook page, animalwhisperer.net. Then sign up for Suzan's newsletter to enjoy more of her fascinating animal-human communication stories. So, until next time, join Suzan as she talks to the animals on The Animal Whisperer.